Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are y'all doing this morning?
Good over here.
Doing well, thanks.
All right, great. This is being hosted as a webinar. So we are going to just give it just 2 more minutes before we start. Just giving everybody a chance to go ahead and log on, and click the links. If you guys still want to send out the information for people to join in, definitely have that opportunity to do so.
Joe, what's up, bro? Aggie Pride.
Okay, and let's go. Are you on right now?
No audio.
You got me now?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
Oh man, look at that magnificence.
Yeah, I was wondering when I didn't hear Aggie Pride back. I was about to
Yeah,
say.
I know,
that was,
I was like, wait a minute.
yeah,
What happened?
yeah. Nah, don't mind
Don't
that. That was just,
say Aggie Pride. For those that do not know, that means, we're Aggies from North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, Highly #1 HBCU in the country, but we'll talk about those things later. Okay. So for those who do not know, my name is Dominique Goodman. I am the founder of Correctional Views, a nonprofit organization just in the line of providing information and insight into the criminal justice system and prison system, due to the fact that I was wrongly incarcerated in 2015 for a crime I did not commit. I wanted to be able to shed truth and light for individuals to see how the justice system actually works, how the criminal system is actually, portrayed through, the lights of media, and how there's a lot of, wrong actions taken against individuals, especially minorities. In the light of recent events, with COVID, we tried to shed light on how, COVID was an injustice to the prison system as well. But now we have the straw that just broke our back with George Floyd. I think a lot of people think that a lot of these protests are simply launched and based only on regards to George Floyd, but we are fighting. His name carries so many names. His name carries so many injustices against our culture. And, this is a moment where we realize that we don't get to go back to whatever this normal that society wants to go back to. We do not continue to step out in the treatment that society continues to place on African Americans. And we have to, stand up and take accountability for things. If they go back the way that they once were with treatment towards African Americans, that's our fault. That's completely our fault. And so we come together right now just to speak with the white community, the Black community as well, just to get a better understanding of what's going on in both sides. What are you actually thinking? What are some things we can actually talk through to have an understanding of, so we could possibly work together in this movement? Because I personally feel, I would rather have everyone on our side, but if you're not on our side, we're still going to figure out how we get this anyway. So before we begin, we're just going to go through the panelists so everybody has a chance to introduce themselves, who they are, what they believe, why they're here today, and what they seek. What's their call to action after this is all done? We'll go ahead and start off with Brian Washington.
Greetings, everybody. My name is Brian Washington. Yeah, I am an Aggie alum. I run a actual social sports group out here in Washington, D.C., and we are community focused. So adults playing sports and doing a little bit of give back. So I'm here and I'm thankful to be here to have a good open conversation with you guys. Thanks for the invite.
And everyone else can jump in, introduce yourself. Don't be scared to speak to the public.
Hey there. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lanisha Whittington Kaminsky. Some call me LA. Either is okay. I am the Deputy Director with Advanced Carolina, and definitely a North Carolinian, born and raised through and through. My entire family is from the mountains, but I currently reside in the Holly Springs, Apex area and have been in Wake County since I came here for school, 2011. So just really good to be here. My hope is to have open discussion, dialogue, and really just, my goal is to just really be in a place where we can come together and discuss the next steps. What is it that we need to implement in policy, but also in education as it impacts our students that will be returning back to school, and how is this impact even when we talk about trauma and PTSD that has now been created in the midst of these streets? How are we going to be ready to respond, to heal, and to support these youth and our communities going forward?
I'm glad you're here today, LA.
So I'm Josh Hostetter. I'm also LA. Thanks for getting us started. I'm also a Raleigh and Wake County resident. I serve as a coach for Central North Carolina, previously in Johnston County and now in Wake County. And I'm here to listen and learn, but also something that's driving for me is let's move from performative action and performative speech to like allyship and progress, and not gentle reform, but revolution, because small reforms have not done any good for people in quite some time. So it's time to reshape the system, and I'm here to use my privilege and perspective to try to move that progress forward.
Joe, I think that you were trying to say something earlier, but we weren't able to hear you. I don't think we got audio on you.
Me now?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, cool. I'm Joseph Escobar. I'm an Aggie alum, same as Brian and Dom. I'm actually a member of the media. Right now, I'm a freelance content creator. I've worked in various aspects of the media, local news, national news, worked on some projects myself, worked with some film creators as well. So I'm here to, give my perspective. It's all as well as contribute to a solution to what's going on, and bridge the gap from my point of view of what I see out there as far as being an employee for media organizations, and also just being a human being.
Thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning, y'all. I'm Laura Abernathy. I was a teacher in Wake County. I am now a coach in Johnston County, and I also am working as a family and community engagement consultant in the Central North Carolina region. I'm a North Carolina native also, so good job, y'all. And very much talking about actionable steps. I've been nodding a lot while y'all talk. I find it very easy to be angry, and I find it very difficult to have a plan and actually work through that plan. So that's definitely my goal today, is actionable, big picture steps.
Good morning, I'm Hannah Smith. Like Laura, I can sit here and nod and agree with a lot of everything y'all said. For work, I'm the Executive Director of Educator Support for Johnston County Schools. Born and raised right here in Clayton. I think that listening is the first step, dialogue, coming together and hearing from both sides, and just listening to what we have to say and how can we come together. And so, like I say, dialogue is first, but then action is second. And so sitting down together at a table or, a Zoom call is first. And then what can we actually do together to move forward?
Okay, awesome. And I just want to thank everybody for taking the time just to introduce themselves. Today, well, a lot of people haven't been able to see our first conversation, and that will be on fault of my own, getting that out to the public. However, the first conversation that we sat down and we were able to actually, discuss various items, go through a little bit of personal perspectives and just kind of understand each other's from both sides. One of the biggest things that I walked away from in the first call was understanding a lot of different perceptions of white privilege. There are individuals who feel that they only carry white privilege if they are rich and their parents never had to work hard for anything and they were just handed everything, and how we had to explain to them that white privilege is not how much money is in your bank account. It's your right to walk down the street and not have to worry if your life is in danger. And so I hope to, create more feedback and takeaways for people are able, that changes my approach on how I come into a conversation, knowing that your definition of white privilege isn't necessarily the truth of the situation. Today, we are just solely going to focus on media and the police, the conversations about defunding the police departments. And I want to start off with speaking on the media, because a lot of times on Facebook, you have individuals from the white community and the Black community basically attacking each other, but nobody is listening. They're already defensive, and their mechanism to kind of understand is shut down. So, whoever wants to start after this first question is, what do you feel Facebook, the leverage of Facebook and Instagram, what powers do you feel that they hold on like representing the truth and like how we're actually understanding one another right now? And anybody can step up and speak. Can't hear you.
Still can't hear you. No, Joe, we can't hear you. Yeah, we still can't hear you.
Hear me? Hear me?
Yeah.
All right, my fault. I don't know what's going on here. Technology. No, I'll jump out and say I think Facebook is dangerous. And it's because anyone has a platform, and I think that has become the most extreme thing during these times, is that with the platform comes your opinion, and people take opinions for face value and consider it to be news. And I think that we have a very difficult time telling the difference. And when searching for the truth, we take a lot of people's opinions and put that into our truth. That's what they're going to run with, and that's what they're going to believe, without there being many facts or many things to support those beliefs that people share on these platforms.
Yeah, no, Joe. I'll piggyback on that directly, and I think it's something that the virus right now has given us a big opportunity to slow things down, give things a pause, and put things in perspective. As a society, we've moved so fast with social media being at the forefront of that I think that they didn't really realize the impact that it could have. And so now I'm definitely glad that all of these things are at the forefront of discussion, because now I do think some things need to have a little bit more guidance beside them. If it's a tweet or if it's a Facebook post that has a lot of traction, there should be a resource attached to it, a tool that tells you, hey, this is based on this fact, check this link directly. And it's something that worked for NBC Universal. It's something that they hadn't even gotten a handle on yet, but it's something that we have to definitely, like I said, we've had this pause and we've had this moment, and we're seeing how the outreach is going so fast. We have to get in front of it. I think there needs to be resources attached to how can we not limit your right to say the things that you say, but also provide resources for an individual to know that this is factual, this is where this comes from.
I will add to Joseph and Brian and say that the new dangers of social media and the internet are not new. Comment culture and the removal of expertise as being something that we respect is not new. This is a danger, and I think Joseph and Brian, you speak to the right things here, because rewind the clock on the internet 15 to 20 years ago, you really had to look for a place to put your platform. Like if you wanted to put something out on the internet, you really had to invest the time to put it out there. Now we've essentially created a massive social platform where you can put things out, and because it's easier to read things at face value and give it an emoji, that's what people do. We're no longer respecting like verified journalism and like boots on the ground work to like look for answers, because Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and other platforms, they support the warm fuzzies that come with reading something that I already sort of believe. And so you get into a dangerous echo chamber. Now, on the other side of that coin, they could be used for a force for good. And I think we're seeing some glimpses of that in some spaces. But I do think, Joseph, you're right. The word is danger in the short term.
Mm-hmm. So some of the things that come to mind when thinking about social media is, how are we looking at the views of who uses social media? Are we looking at it from the lens of the oppressed or the oppressor? And so that is, as we look at the dangers of social media that, others have already lifted, it is very real. But let's also be frank about historical implications of the fact that, let's not call folks minorities, let's call folks people of color, Black folks, are disproportionately hired in mainstream media. Our journalism and our journalists are still disproportionately white men. And so when we talk about the lack of hiring that has been this way systemically for many generations, and it is still the same in 2020, then we have to look at that folks that are Gen Zs, folks that are millennials, folks that are baby boomers, let's talk about intergenerational, are also using social media, as they have been oppressed for years, to be an interconnected way to actually reach other folks across the nation. That's how we're seeing these incidents of violence, even though it is a jarring, even though we shouldn't pass around videos of the impact on Black and brown bodies, because that is, let's be very frank, that is a reminiscent of 60s lynching mementos. But it is to elevate the very thing that communities have said have existed for many years and were ignored. It's the very thing that mainstream media has suppressed because big money in politics pays the bills. And so as we see social media as a tool, I agree with a point that Brian elevated, is having a discourse and a guide of how can it be effectively used, so that the young generation, here we are, we're going to use social media because we haven't been given a platform to speak before. And as we see this continue to happen, we know it's going to be a mainstay of our way we engage, our communication, the way we're elevating protests. Even in the midst of COVID, we've had to digitally organize in new ways that we've never done before. Zoom has become, unfortunately, a part of my daily routine. And so how to even Facebook Live your Zoom, those are productive tools. And so we really, my opinion and the way that I'm seeing this, is we have to speak to the oppressed and not lump them in with tools to call the oppressor to task. And the oppressor can be big money in politics. Oppressors can be terrorist groups that only seek to alienate, target, and terrorize communities that we've already seen. And so that's the grounding that I'm at.
Okay, so I understand that, that views that may, be presented on social media may be biased. They may be opinionated, not based in facts. However, to LA's point, this has been the first time that, even the youth has been able to, portray what's actually happening. So we're seeing images of individuals getting shot, that are unarmed. We're seeing individuals, lose their life. Unfortunately, like in the past month alone, we've had to see somebody gunned down. We've had to see somebody suffocated. That's very traumatic. So what part of this do we place accountability for the news, like Fox, MSNBC, CNN, to start sourcing these live streams of videos that can't really be disputed? Like, is that a realistic, idea to think that, the truth can come from actual citizens in the community, or no?
I think to that point about who the truth can come from, right? That's what makes social media dangerous, but it's also what makes social media in any way helpful, right? Because on one hand, I can say whatever I want. Done, point, click, you don't like it, I'm gonna defriend you. And on the other hand, here's this article, it's wrong. Let me show you a video about why it's wrong. Let me tell you about my own experience about why it's wrong. And so for me, it's a lot about working on how we consume. Do I only consume from people who look like me? Do I only consume from people who agree with me? Or do I go out and try to look at what has actually happened? And that's not a good wrap up there, but yes.
Okay, so to that point, and I'll bring it up, and this is to the individuals on the call that are the white community. A lot of times I've been witnessing a lot of within the white community having arguments with each other. Something that stood out to me yesterday is there's like a whole movement, and I do not remember his name. Tony Timpa, that is his name, a white individual that was unjustly killed by the cops. Now there are white individuals on Facebook saying, well, where's our protests? Where's our demands? Why aren't people rioting up for us? Because, we didn't do it. We were shot. Black folks aren't the only one. However, that goes completely against the, you know, the narrative that we're bringing to light. Like, so I don't personally say that, you know, Black people are the only ones killed. However, to sit up there and denounce our history of pain, our history of trauma, and what happens every single day, like, how do you do that? And when you guys are engaging with these conversations with other white individuals, how are you really taking accountability of saying, hey, it ain't about us right now? I understand that we get killed too, but like, do we really walk out of the door scared for our lives every day? Like, how are you guys addressing these conversations?
So I can't speak for Laura or Josh, but I haven't even heard of that. So I don't know. I was trying to watch y'all's faces whenever you said that, Dominique. I have been having a lot of conversations with people in the white community over the last couple of weeks. And I will say conversations with the white community is much more difficult than conversations with the Black community for me. And I don't stop. I will say there are people who I go to really help me. While yes, it is convicting to have conversations with the Black community, those conversations are more helpful for me to then have conversations with the white community. And it is because I think, going back to how you even started this conversation, Dominique, the white privilege, people don't understand or recognize their white privilege. And this weekend, Saturday, there were events all day in downtown Clayton around this whole movement. And so, having the conversation of all lives don't matter till Black lives matter, right? But it's having people really understand that. But it, just like we're sitting down and having dialogue, it is having the very similar conversations within the white community of sitting down and having sometimes just even white people having those conversations. And like us pushing and not backing down simply because their belief systems are wrong. Like, we have to have those conversations and push those as well.
I'm happy you said that. I think it's important. Peers have to talk to each other. You know what I mean? A lot of times I think it is difficult for people who aren't used to diversity in spaces to have conversations. But I think by holding each other accountable and having conversations that you would have amongst your more diverse spaces in those spaces, I think eventually that begins to enact a little bit of thought process in people that's like, maybe I should consider this a little bit more.
You know, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. I'm going to piggyback off of Brian and Hannah here with it. And I think that what I'm starting to realize amongst, my white, this is becoming the uncomfortable dinner conversation that is popping up. And I'm happy to see that it's taking place, because I feel like this is where these conversations happen. And there's a generation gap, I feel like, with a lot of people's beliefs. And, my white friends who grew up with me, y'all hear me?
Yeah.
With me? I'm starting to realize that a lot of my white friends who grew up with me, their experience with Black classmates, Black coworkers, Black neighbors, Black friends is totally different from the experience that their parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and older relatives may have had. So I definitely think that as the dialogue continues, there's a lot of work to be done. And, I think that it really took the world to come to a screeching halt for everybody to realize, sit down and see what's really going on out there for these conversations to jumpstart. And I look at it kind of as a reset. It's something that we kind of needed for people to keep going. But as I've been telling people, you can't lose stamina in this fight. You can't lose stamina in these conversations. They'll continue to get uncomfortable. We need to continue to have them. But I think that the important thing is that our peers are starting to have conversations with their older relatives. And I think it's a very impactful thing at this moment.
It's not, and I'll jump in, it's not just our older relatives. And I think that's what we're finding. It is people our age. It is people that still are have some beliefs. So, two things that stuck out there. So, you're right, like, you can't get tired. And I think that I had a conversation with a friend recently, like, as white people, it's like, oh, I'm tired, we can take a break, where Black and brown people can't take a break, right? For me, my daughter is biracial. I can't take a break, right? This fight, we never get to take a break from this fight. And as white people, we recognizing our privilege that we shouldn't be able to take a break either. And I think Ashley just pointed out in the chat, this is true. Like, I think, and I don't know if we're allowed to say names or not, but when people like Candace Owens, a Black person, puts out these videos, it's like all of a sudden, oh, there's a Black person that's speaking to all of a different stance. And we share that on social media. And so it gives people who have a different view on things to the stance of Black Lives Matter than white people who are on the other side. Then they just share that and blast that. That gives them permission, right, to carry their privilege in a different area.
I will.
And I definitely think that it is extremely important, the point that Dom elevates around, white people talking to white people. It has been this way for years. I'm from a rural area, like I said, born and raised. My husband's actually from Johnston County. I was a 4-H'er, went to an all-white Christian school before I was homeschooled, went to almost an all-white church. So my entire life, I saw up close and personal, unfortunately, implicit biases, microaggressions, and overt, all the way up to hearing every term in the book. And so what has definitely, as Dom elevated, it is extremely important for white people to have conversations with white people, because I don't have the capacity, nor is it my job to teach what I'm going through. This isn't, it's my choice. I'm not, let's be really clear, I'm speaking for me in this moment. Black people aren't a monolith. So if one individual decides to speak up and decides to take on the role of teaching, that's their job. That's what they've signed up for. That's what their heart is leading them to do. However, my heart is tired. My heart is weary. My heart is, I have a Black brother. I have an older Black brother who just passed, unfortunately, a month ago. I know all too real of what it means to live in a town where it's in your face every single day. And so folks are asking, what advice do you have for me? Hold your folks accountable. And if you really do want advice, pay a Black therapist. Pay for their time. Don't offer and ask folks for free labor. Because still asking someone for their free thoughts, their free labor is still an owed practice. You owe me your thoughts. Why have you earned my thoughts? Giving yourself the distinction of ally. Who gave you the ally badge? It's not a Girl Scout badge. It's not a Boy Scout badge. How did we get to this point where we could just say ally and there isn't a metric? There isn't an actual place to say, okay, what have you done? Being an ally is an everyday accountability practice, as Hannah was mentioning, where you have to consistently be in this place every single day. I wake up with my family and we think about this, and we go to sleep thinking about this. And so I do say, not to place even weight on Black therapists, but they are folks that are hired, that are willing to be paid to help you flesh out and even get through some of the family angst that has come along in your own familial lineage. And I, as a person, I don't have the capacity to do that. And I do want to elevate that here, that it's really important for folks. And I do appreciate Dom for creating this space, because I trust Dom. And being able to come this space means that I feel safe, because Dom is a trusted individual in my community, and I know she has my back. I can't walk into a situation blind without a trusted confidant in my culture, in my community, because I've been hurt. And so that's just some points I want to elevate, in hearing how I do completely agree that holding white folks accountable is extremely important for the duration of this fight and for the support of Black people as we heal.
Josh, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, thank you. To sort of loop back to the Tony Timpa case, like, how do you respond to that? For me, it is a vigilant lookout for an explanation that one example of this happening, one example of this, like this white officer that's killed, that is not proof of something, because a single Black life being killed is not what is at stake here. It's hundreds of years of oppression, hundreds of years of overt racism, covert racism, microaggressions, a systemic, layered, almost impossible to peel back just how deep it goes, oppression and problem. And to explain that to someone when they say, well, this individual was killed, and so where's the white protest? That's not what this is about. So for me, it's helping those individuals through polite language and impolite language reframe what's really going on. I'm a person that really likes to get into a good conversation and argument, and pulling out one example And trying to prove that from the example is a logical fallacy, and I won't stand for that. And so and that's what I do. And the same individuals that pull out that one, you can find any voice on Twitter that will prove your point. You can't broadcast that, even if they've got 350,000 followers. That's a single example is not going to do it.
Well, I completely agree with that. And then just to like elevate LA's point as well, it is very traumatic, you know, just speaking on certain stances from us. Like, I don't know personally, with LA, Brian and Joseph that are on the call, what experiences they have had with their race being implied against them. But like I told you all before, you know, I was in prison for 5 years for a crime I did not commit. I had a police officer walk into a courtroom lying on a grand jury indictment saying that it was me. The eyewitnesses said it was her. Eyewitnesses didn't say nothing. Eyewitnesses never described a Black woman. They told an officer driver was white. So when you have that information at a later point and you know that they try to place it against someone else, but you still took the fall for it, because at that time, being a military brat didn't mean nothing. My college experience meant absolutely nothing. The fact that I'm furthering my education, it meant absolutely nothing. The fact that I never walked into a courthouse without a parent by my side on the other side of the country meant absolutely nothing to them. This is a Black girl in this courtroom and she's a villain. That's how I got painted on. I had them sit up there and make up charges for priors that I've never had. And so just for them to have this ease of creating this villain monster as a Black individual, simply, like, it's just like, wait, like, y'all are comfortable with this. This is okay. And so, you know, I've never been one of the advocates that is for the abolishment of prison. There are a lot of individuals like that. And so right now they stand firm for the defunding of police officers. And, you know, just speaking on this, like, you know, information, it's just like, you know, what is the stance and what do you feel actually comes with removing police officers? Do you all feel that, you know, it's possible to even step forward if like police officers don't have access to all this money? What really happens? Like, does that then make the white community scared for Black individuals? Or does that feel like, okay, we can create more different steps and strategies to go along? I want to be inclusive of one question we had from a member. They said, how can local organizers actually push demands for police change and policing when some local governments are trying to adopt Obama's plan as well with no depth? If that makes, if everybody understood that question.
I can give some brief feedback to that question, and would love to, after I give brief response, follow back after other folks' comments to just really answer the question that you elevated, Dom, around what does it really look like to fund and divest in police, and what are the replacements to community support. But first, to really answer that, each city, each municipality is different. There are different policy groups. There are different folks that are already working behind the scenes and have for years. This is not the first time that groups have been really working behind the scenes to push for reallocation of funding from heavy policing. Okay, this is seen from the national media because we understand folks are tired, right? We're done with the nice politics, but we're also done with, and I believe I heard someone on the call, I think Josh mentioned this, performative actions. And so in order to get through those performative actions, for example, in the city of Raleigh, groups such as Raleigh Pact, groups such as now Raleigh Demands Justice, which has Carolina Peace, Emancipate North Carolina. It also has REPS, RREPS. It has all these various groups, YAPS, the Young Americans Protesting. All these groups have been working for 4 years on policy and really pushing the city council. The city council conversation that happened last week, there are still 200 people waiting to give comment. That is a result of 4 years of work culminating into being able to mobilize people. And then behind the scenes, we have to look at what is the budget. We know that the folks are calling on the resignation of the Raleigh, chief of police, but we also look at the city manager who is in charge of hiring the city police. It's those kind of questions that we have to look at to be able to say, if we give you a plan to replace this person, who exactly is over the hiring? Who's over the firing? How can we go to their meetings? You have to attend their actual meetings. Just going to the front person, the person who you just see their face, there's always someone behind the curtain. And plugging into some of those organizations, it's the same in Durham, same in Fayetteville. There's a Fayetteville PAC. There's a Greenville Pitt County PAC. They're all over the state. And it's about seeing where the dark money in politics are, who is in charge of hiring and firing, who's giving money, what corporations are giving money to who, paying for what campaign. And so that will actually bring teeth to creating a budget and a policy analysis that can actually be written to bring teeth to what the community is already elevating as their demands. You have to combine both. And then you have to join in concert with groups that are already leading this work so that you're not replicating and duplicating effort and overshadowing and creating confusion and dysfunction in the community. And if you could create synergy with the policy in the community, then that's at least some steps that we're already seeing that is working. We saw that in Minneapolis. Folks are already committing to defunding the police. We're seeing this in Los Angeles, California, where they are committing to reducing the police budget by $100 million, $150 million. And we're also seeing this in DC, that folks are calling out that a Black Voters Matter plaza sign is cute, but it's not what we're asking for. The fact that your budget just came out and you're still trying to increase the police budget, I believe, by like 19 million or so many $1 million as compared to last year, we don't want a sign. We want our lives. And so folks are staying on people in new ways that we have never done before. And that is social media, but that's also policy combined with community action. It can't be disjointed.
I think you said the realest thing about it is just funding, budgeting. You know, all of these things direct each one of us. It doesn't matter which neighborhood or where you live, but if you're budgeting that money towards the police rather than community organizations, playgrounds, the things that bring people outside and bring things together, then it's a wash. What are we creating? I think one of the things that incited most of us very passionately was just even tweets directing to bring military into our American soil when we already have the National Guard here. And we're already on the groundwork of coming together to have conversations about switching the budget, about changing the budget from one side of things to a complete other side of things that will bring everybody up. And it's something that's very real, because this is a thing that's in your community no matter where you live, and it's only gonna service you if you reform for everybody. And that's the biggest plight, is people have to get through their head the fact that by allotting less money to policing and more money to community activities and things that keep people together and keep our society, you know, moving in the right direction, as far as, you know, like I said, for me, for example, my avenue has been sports. Sports has been the most diverse platform we have that's brought us together. And we've been able to have so many great conversations and move things so much further by having a teammate that looks different from us, that may, you know, bring something to the table that's very different from me. If we're referencing basketball, maybe I'm a shooter, this person is really good at passing. We're all part of one team. And if we're in the direction of making this country what we call great and what we want to see, we have to realize that diversity brings that. Anytime I go to another nation, I look at the fact that, you know, what I really love about this country is I can get pizza, I can get soul food, I can get tacos, I can get everything together in one space. And so now it's time to invest in all of those things, to actually put money into the things that make us great. And to have an internal military is not something that's going to create what we're having now, which is peaceful and insightful thoughts to push us further.
Yeah, it's not defunding the police to save money, right? It's defunding the police and putting that money where it's actually going to be helpful. I randomly Googled a couple of different police departments around us today, and every single one of their mission statements says the words prevent crime somewhere in it. And like, not to just be argumentative, but if you are preventing crime, shouldn't you be working yourself out of a job? If you are actually doing that, you should stop coming to work because they don't need you. And that's not what's happening. So something in there is broken, and we've got to take it all the way down, see what is actually necessary. And if we build capacity in our communities, we actually fund all of our communities and all of our schools, we'll be able to actually prevent things from happening.
Well, I was speaking with LA, and I told her I went out to the protest a couple weeks ago in Raleigh, and I personally, Dominique Goodman is on probation, and I don't have time to play with these police officers right now. So I'm going to stay peaceful. I'm going to stay to the side, like, because I'm not going back to jail or prison for anybody. It's just not happening. I'm sorry. And so I was like, all right, Dom, the moment we see things go left, we out. The moment we see somebody, anything, we're gone. But it wasn't like that. We made it a point. The organizer made it a point. This is going to be peaceful. You are not going to change our narrative. This is our mission. This is our purpose. This is what we're out here talking about. And so we walked and we walked. And I can tell you exactly, because I have my watch on, we had walked for 2.3 miles. And out of nowhere, people started getting tear gassed. There was no violence. Nobody was rioting. There were no looters. No one was stealing anything. No one was fighting. No justice, no peace. Maybe the most ratchet thing they said was F Donald Trump. I don't disagree with them. So, maybe someone heard something like that, but to be immediately agitated and then expected to respond in a peaceful manner, what is really expected out of us? So it's just like, okay, we're going to mess with you, but if you come back at us, you're in the wrong. And then when I watched the news later that night, they tell a completely different story. And I'm sitting up here, I have people arguing me on my Facebook telling me I got it wrong, that I didn't see what I saw, and they just threw smoke in your face. And so it's just like, when you have the situations like that, and we're supposed to be trusting the police, like we said, to protect or prevent, crime, what you're inciting it. You're coming up with reasons to lock people up. And one of the main things that I try to tell people all the time prior to them going out to these events and these rallies, do not depend on local law lawyers telling you, we got you pro bono if you get arrested. Because let me incite you to just one little thing, just how the rest of us are broke, or not everybody's broke, but everybody is going through some type of financial hardship due to COVID-19. The police and the prison and jail systems had to release a large amount of people from their systems that they get paid for daily. They're losing money right now. So they're not even writing as many tickets. They don't have as many court fees right now, traffic violations. They don't have as many people sitting in their beds in jails to collect between $100 and $200 a day. So they're taking full advantage of this opportunity to lock as many people up as they can. And that is a system that's not really being highlighted, that they need their money back. So how do we actually provide or push, change to create this, to kind of target where this money is going to channel into, when they're fighting to stay alive monetarily as well? So they're going to keep arresting people. They're going to keep agitating people because they broke right now and they need people back in jails and prisons. That's the thing that people aren't talking about. That needs to be funded as well. What are your thoughts and steps for that?
I think you said the most important thing, and it ties back to what LA was speaking on. There has to be money allotted to these things. No one should grow up thinking that they want to have a skewed version of policing someone. Someone should grow up to aspire to want to do things that serve the community that they live in. And if we shift our funding and we switch our mindset from wanting to put money into a private prison or put money into things that contain people and make people into different individuals when they have to come back into the same society we live in, if we put money efforts and hiring efforts into these different programs, then we'll have a different society. We definitely, we're all one of the things I harpen back to is, if we love America and we truly want to be here, then why shouldn't we want to put money into things that are going to make it what we want for our children, what we want for ourselves, what we want as far as everything goes. So, and that it all ties back into funding. No one should want to fund that system versus something that is in a positive manner and has people thinking already and moving themselves towards something that has nothing to do with anything type of criminal system.
And Dom, if I may, some points just come to mind is, as an educator, and Dom, you know that I'm a history person because I'm a researcher.
You're about to drop some facts.
And I'm a teacher. I'm a former teacher. My family has a music school in Southeast Raleigh, but I've taught in like every public, charter, private school. And so with that, looking historically, when we're talking about defunding and divesting in police, we are looking at the system in which it was birthed. So emancipation came in 1863, but it did not actually take effect for all states until 1865. In 1865, however, what came prepared in the courts and what was passed very swiftly by U.S. Southern states was the Black Codes. The Black Codes were the literal angry response of plantation owners who were angry that they had to release their slavery contracts with enslaved Black individuals, right? And so Black Codes was literally that anger and policy that said the police had the full authority and the purpose to arrest Black individuals, Black folks, for breathing, for walking on sidewalks, for literally congregating in groups that were too large, you could get arrested. Now, here's the thing. Once you were arrested, you were contracted as free labor back to the very plantation that you were just emancipated from. This system was never built for freedom and autonomy of Black people. It was built to create modern day slavery because plantations couldn't keep a hold of us. From the Black Codes ushered in, and this was at the same time of Reconstruction era, right? The Reconstruction era went from the 1865 until 1877 when the Jim Crow era came in. But the Black Codes helped to usher in the Jim Crow era. During the Black Codes, there were 3 civil rights acts that were actually passed that talked about the liberation of freedom for Black folks to go to amusement parks, be on public transportation. These are civil rights acts that we don't discuss really deeply in history aside from 1964, because that's more in our modern day lifetime, right? And voting rights. However, this was happening at the same time that police were already arresting folks for just living so that they could be contracted back to the plantations. From there, the budgets and the construct was actually designed and given into war on drugs, school to prison pipeline, and the exact same policy language that was used in Black Codes have been used in our education system, the budget allocation to support SROs, to support in police in our schools, and it has also been used to do for-profit prisons. So when we're talking about divesting, defunding police, we're talking about overhauling the entire system from its inception because it was created to keep Black folks in bonds and in chains because folks were big mad in the South that they can no longer keep us in slavery. And we have to begin to look at those policies if we really want to put some teeth in the policies today. There are definitely recommendations, Education Justice Alliance, look them up. They're already talking about community interventionists instead of police. Some of the things that folks are calling police for, guess what? Community interventionists could do that. Folks who are not trained in in policing tactics. Somebody told me, Dom, I remember I was talking about this, that, police, when you're training, you do less hours than somebody who was going to barber school. And that don't even include arms training. So we're not even talking about this, even less when you're talking about textbook training. And so as we're looking at community interventionists, mediation, when we're looking at other, like there's the Cure Violence, and I haven't read through these, so I'm not supporting them, but I'm saying patrolling neighborhoods, patrols of local women, that's an actual group. So there's different things, but I wanted to ground us in that historical, facts. That's what we're working from, is this deficit all the way coming from emancipation of slavery.
Thank you for grounding us in that, because I think that is some part of the conversations that we need to have, because when we talk about policy change, it's like, I think that what people need to understand is this is not just a today thing. Like, where we come from is not right now. What we're talking about is, well, I was about to say hundreds, really 2,000 years, but I mean, what we're talking about is 400 years of history. And so to ground ourselves in the facts in what you're talking about. So thank you for bringing that to light.
Okay, and I asked a question last week because we were talking about the time period and the length of how this was raised and who created it and how the system was structured and yada, 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 yada. However, I also, highlighted the fact that all of those people creating the system are no longer living. They are no longer around. They are not with us today. So all of these mentalities, all of the enforcement of the policies that have already been created and extended forward are being pushed to get today by people still alive. So, as part of like the white community and, considering yourselves to be, people that, this is wrong. Like, what do you do to help like push like in your rights to help push these policies so they're not continuing to be slated against us?
I think my answer to that question also sort of loops back to our last discussion and the one that the person put in the chat. You can't just push for removal of something. You have to push for whatever vacuum is created to be filled with community supports. So a personal stance I take is that we in the United States, we have and always have had a very thin safety net, but in a very expansive security state. At all levels of government, we're spending roughly twice what we do, or twice on police, prisons, and courts than we spend on welfare programs and income supplements and, housing supplements. So what I can do to step back against that is to start speaking out on the policies and programs and procedures that are going to be positive. Because the argument that, this is something that is before my time and I can't change it. You're keeping it going. You can change it. You can't change what they did, but you are putting it forward every day, but continuing. And in the white community, I will tell you, and Hannah, Laura, you can speak on your experience. I'm not going to speak for all people, but I will tell you that is an argument that comes up a lot. Well, I didn't do it. You might not have done it, but you're doing it right now. I didn't do it. Well, you might not have done it, but you're making excuses right now. Well, I didn't do it. Right. But you are benefiting from not having to represent your entire race in a discussion. You're benefiting from having your race represented in curriculum materials. You are benefiting from it. So I guess being tough in conversations, talking at length about the things that will fill that vacuum, talking about education and community service and healthcare rather than policing and courts. That it's not eloquent, but that's part of my fight.
Okay. Did anyone else have anything to say on that?
I was waiting for Laura wanted to talk. I didn't want to like jump over her. Josh, I would just echo everything you say. And I feel like some of the things that I would say have like now become hashtags, right? Like silence is like you're complying, right? Or, like racism, if you're not anti-racist, you're racist. But like what those represent is truth. Like if you're not speaking out, like by not making a statement, you are making a statement, right? So like entering into those dialogues. So all those things that have become hashtags, there is meaning behind that. And so I think it circles back to the conversations that we have to have, because if you didn't create it, but as Josh said, you're benefiting from it. So I would just echo everything Josh said, and it forces us to have those conversations so that we can dismantle white supremacy, so we can dismantle the systems in which are currently built so that we can change them and change all the policies behind them. So yes, we talked about this last week. I mean, it's two changes, just changes in heart, which some people can care about or not, and it's changes in policy. And that's where, the greatest change is going to happen.
Okay, well, I have a question, and I'll speak on this stance, and then, Brian, Joseph, LA, if you guys want to hop in, because I feel that, personal opinion, there's people that I have spoken with. I do understand that they are doing more and taking active steps in change, but I personally feel like a lot of people with social media fall back like, oh, I retweeted Black Lives Matter, I support it. Oh, I posted a Black picture on social, I stand with them. Oh, we just painted this on our street, so that means something. What does that really mean if you're just pushing a button? And what do you all feel about that? Josh, Joseph, Brian, LA.
First, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
All right, cool. We're all here. I think a lot of people have good intentions, but I think a lot of people are figuring out the best way to get involved. And I think that an important conversation to have is that we all have a different role in this fight. not everyone's meant to be outside. Not everyone is meant to be at the rallies and stuff like that. But we need advocacy online. We need people speaking up at their jobs. You know, we need people speaking to their hiring managers. Let's bring in some more representation matters. You know, I have an African-American friend. I have a Latino friend. I have this friend. Let's bring them in. I think that they can help the culture of our work environment. I think that everyone has a different role. And right now, emotions and tensions are running extremely high with this situation. It's very fresh. We're a couple of weeks into seeing George Floyd. You know, we've heard the news about Breonna Taylor, where they're still seeking justice in that. You know, we saw the video with Ahmaud Arbery, and I think that everything is very fresh. I think a lot of people are very emotional. And I think that the immediate reaction is for people to jump out and just do something. But I think that as us, for people of color and African Americans and people of the Latin community, we need to be more intentional with these conversations that we're having with our white colleagues, our white friends, and the people that we interact with on a daily basis, and let them know, listen, this is what I need from you. Yo, you're good at this. It'll be a good idea if you step in this fight right here, and this is how you can contribute. So while I think that, you know, the Black Lives Matter written in DC, and I think that the representation at the protests and rallies is a great thing. Like I said, though, it goes back to stamina. And I think it's going to take us to think extremely hard and to be very creative on how we can keep this fight going and which role every single one of us can play in this fight, whether we're black, white, red, whatever it is, our race or creed.
No, I think you're right on that. And I think, you know, going back to the pandemic, it's like right now we're in a perfect storm. We're in a perfect opportunity for us to have hard conversations and, you know, correct this, you know, just twist this so our society looks way better for our kids. Both if you're, you know, if you're black, white, whatever you are, the society looks way better. And, you know, I think the way to start that is to, you know, do exactly what we're doing. Now that it's here, okay, you threw out a hashtag because you understand the simple premise of the fact that if I'm seeing this person constantly treated this way, I want to tell you, I'm upset. I think their life matters. All right, now that I've said that, let me go further than that. Let me go to a point of, let me hire somebody on my team that doesn't look like me, somebody that doesn't share the same exact features as me, that's not from my family, that has a different background from me. You know, I reference this again, you know, working with a subsidiary of NBC Universal, Comcast Spotlight. I was on the greatest team of my life. We were made up of the most diverse team of my professional experience as well. And, you know, literally it was a team of 6 of us consisting of a gay white male, I pick on my Latino friend. It's so funny because she's very short. So I pick on her for being a short Latino woman. Two white women with different, very diverse white women, a Filipino gentleman, and me. And that was what I felt to be like the beginning of like a perfect storm. Our team was so excellent when it came to getting things done together because we had perspectives. We had things that looked different and felt different, and we came with different ideas. That's what made that team great, and that's what can make us great, is if we open up to funding, hiring, and making things look different from what we see in front of us every day, and stay connected to putting money into things that promote that.
You know, there are levels to this, right? There are levels. And so if we can think through, this is how I at least see this framing, Dom, the hashtags and sharing, you know, that's baby steps. That's what I'm gonna call that level. That's baby steps. And when, you know, Brian had elevated this around like having a guidebook for social media, I had elevated before, you know, what are metrics to actually, you know, what is an ally? This is really, in my opinion, the beginning of what are steps to measure the involvement, the commitment to allies are to this movement. It may begin with a hashtag. You may be awaking in this moment to say, oh, it's like this. This is real. But then as we move along, how when it's no longer salacious in the media, it's no longer sexy in the tabloids, it's no longer, you know, out here in the nebulous of saying like, I get a bracelet, I have a t-shirt. Where are we going to see those levels change up? Are you going to graduate to the next level? Or are you just going to say, I did my due for 2020. I feel good about myself. I'm done. And we'll begin to see the separation very soon of who's with it and who's not. The other part is the folks that are with it, there are still levels within those levels. You know, I had a conversation with someone, they wanted my opinion. I've known them for years, adore them, love them. And it was a question of, you know, should I show up to a Black Solidarity meeting if they don't want me there? You just answered your own question. Solidarity and support is not always being the loudest in the room, the most vocal in the room, or even sometimes being in the room. Support can be, can I drop off water and I'll see y'all down the road. Support can be, I can speak at that city council meeting because you need me as an ally to confront the mayor. Sometimes it's not being in spaces where folks are healing from trauma, and there's different levels to this, and it can't be one size fits all. That's what I'm saying. Like, we can't give you a guidebook to say, if you follow these 3 steps, you'll be great. No, it is about getting to know the community in which you reside in. And I do mean, like, how do you communicate with the Black community? And if they are responding by saying, I don't want you here, that is your way as being an ally. It's falling back. If they say, I need you to show up, show up. There's levels. And so that's where I see the hashtag is we have to see what is next for our allies and to see how long this is going to last once the media has moved on to something else.
My fear behind some of this sometimes, like I said, we just speak on our perception, is that this is the cool thing for white kids to do right now. A lot of times with our culture, there's so many people that have fought to do everything within our culture. Like the whole movement that I'm bothered with, it was like the fight to say the N-word. Everybody wants to say it. Oh, it's just a pronoun for my homie. It is not. And, you know, everything that, you know, becomes popular within our culture, you know, a lot of people in the white community, especially the younger generations, they line up for it. Like, it used to trip me out so much when, like, the baby came out. I don't know if you guys are all familiar with the baby or whatever, but if you look at video clips of his concerts, all you see is white kids. That's it. Like, it trips me to crap out. Like, you know, much praise to your success, whatever, but all you see is white kids at the his concerts. And then, like, sometimes I'm thinking, like, does your mom know where you at? Like, I'm pretty sure she would have some problems with this. But it's just like, so are you galvanizing? Because this is the cool thing to do right now. At the protest in Raleigh, there was this one girl and the whole Black community was getting pissed at her. She was this white girl because everybody's yelling, no justice, no peace, F Trump, whatever. But then when someone would go to speak on the microphone, she would try to tell people to shut up and be quiet. Baby girl, this is not your lane to tell us how to react right now emotionally. If people are yelling and people are talking, let them yell and let them talk. Let them get their emotions off their chest. She felt the need to, no, this is not what you do. Who? Like, so I'm looking at you like, who are you? And so, like, how do you guys, like, feel about that? Like, is this a movement, a cool trend? Like, where does this go?
Yeah, Laura, you go, because I know you were unmuted a while ago, and then, yeah.
Well, I just feel like it really speaks to the performative nature of social media as a generalization, right? Like, I had a conversation with somebody the other day and I was like, think about it. You can not call your friend on their birthday, but if you post an IG story, you're cool, right? It's the same kind of thing. Like, on that micro level, social media is performative for a lot of people as a generalized statement. On the, like, macro level, also think about businesses. Why are you posting Black Lives Matter? Is it because you don't want people to stop giving you money? Or is it because you actually care? And if you actually cared, wouldn't you have already done this? I talked to Hannah this morning about basically the last 2 weeks, I've watched all 5 tenets of critical race theory just play out, like boom, 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 all of them over and over and over again. And on that macro business level, it's interest conversion. I'm only doing this because it benefits me as a white person. I am only doing this because it keeps money in my pocket. It keeps people out of my DMs. It keeps people out of my comments telling me that I'm a racist and having to spend my time and money convincing that I'm not. So I'm just going to do this and I can check a box and I can move forward.
So yes, all that. And then I want to circle back to something Joseph said earlier, like when you were talking about like steps we could take or whatever, like something you said was, you know, oh, I've got an African-American friend, I've got a Latino friend. And I think that a lot of people, they say that as like, I'm cool, I'm not a racist, you know, I've got this friend, I got this friend. And like, I just want to kind of like build off of that and clarify, like, that's not enough to just say, I've got this friend or I've got this friend and like, I'm not a racist. You know, a lot of people sometimes like have a like their perception is wrong. Like people think for me that I'm in this because my daughter's biracial. Like, no, like my belief in equity is in my core. And like that was started way before 6 years ago. You know, like this is who I am. Yes, it hits different because my daughter is biracial, but like this is just who I am. And I don't go around like say like yelling that from, you know, this. I think a lot of people say that, oh yeah, I got a Black friend, I got a Hispanic friend. Like, no, it's not about that. Like, you can't use that as an excuse. Instead, engage in dialogue with those people, become allies with those people. Don't use that as an excuse to other people. Like, actually engage in in that dialogue and like do stuff with them, rather than using that as a, I don't know, like platform. You know what I mean? Like, actually use them as partners in the work. So I kind of want to talk about that because, and if you actually use that as a relationship, then Dom, come back to what you said. It's not just this right now cool, trendy thing. It's something that you actually continue beyond when the media moves on to whatever's next, whenever the hashtags fall off, whenever we move on to something else. If you're actually engaging in this, your allies, and you're engaging in this work, then it doesn't fall off. Then you actually continue with this when it's no longer the cool, trendy thing.
Okay, so I'm gonna this is gonna be, we have a couple minutes left and I want to wrap it up on this last point with media. Like I said before, I try to keep things away from politics as much as possible. I hate them, but it's necessary sometimes. And then as we're wrapping up this last bit of the conversation, you know, at the end, if you guys feel like the need, well, actually, I actually request prior to everybody getting off, like, what are your personal next steps of action to ensure change is coming? Because like I said, if anything goes back to normal, we all have to hold ourselves accountable for this. So, you know, we've all discussed about the, you know, the fact that we have fear. Like we always, I wake up every morning scared. What's next? What did Trump tweet last night? That's my biggest fear, because I feel like he incites a lot of rage within people that don't like us, and that is what that is. But he tweeted yesterday, 12 hours ago, Colin Powell. No, that's not one. That's not it. He talked about Colin too. See, he ain't right. So this is the one. Could it be remotely possible that in Roger Goodell's rather interesting statement of peace and reconciliation, he was intimating that it would be okay for the players to kneel or not stand during the national anthem, thereby disrespecting our country and our flag? What is your take on that being promoted out on Twitter? Like, we're trying to be peaceful, and that's what our president is saying. Go ahead.
Joe, I think you froze completely on us, brother.
I feel like he'd be about to get into some deep words and technology.
Yeah, he does. He looks like he was about to get into deep thought. As soon as he jumps back, I'll definitely let him take over. But I think it's something to be spoken on. Like you said, Laura, it seems like the world is just turned upside down in a matter of days. Because I do know between like the media and how things were looked at before, you know, wasn't it just like a week ago that saying Black Lives Matter was hate speech? Now it's like switched all around, and I'm just like, you know, the 49ers are, you know, commending people for taking a stance, and it's a lot, and it's overwhelming. And, you know, I just want to let, you know, allies know that this is a tireless fight. It's a constant and it's an everyday conversation. And it's something that you can't be skewed on, and something that you definitely can't take for granted. The facts that people are going to switch completely how they feel about something. They're going to be marching with the protesters. But what we have to do behind that, if we're truly allies, is we have to put money, our thoughts, and our efforts into things that are actually changing the systems. And so, you know, I definitely, because I know I wasn't the only one thrown for a complete whirlwind when you know, these things, now everybody is tweeting this, you know, and everybody's standing behind it, and everybody is putting forth, you know, this you know, what I don't know. I don't want to say that this is just a face mask. I want to say that we are better than that. I want to say that, you know, this is the opportunity for people to actually put the effort into it. But, you know, we have to say that out loud, though. We have to say, hey, don't let this just be what I'm saying this week because it is cool, because it's trendy. Let's really put action behind this. Let's put funding, and let's put these budgets and this money behind this, because it helps everyone. It serves every single person in this society. Joe, I think you're back.
Am I back? Am I back? I'm
Yeah,
back.
we can hear you too.
Oh, I think I was about to say something about the Trump tweet, but like.
Go ahead. We were waiting for you to come back for that.
Oh, yeah. You know, I think that, you know, I mean, he's the leader of our country. Dang,
Joe, you're breaking up again.
Stop.
You're still breaking up. But
I was so excited to hear what he had
everyone
to say.
around the
Okay.
studio. Yeah.
Joe, you were breaking up so bad, bro. Are you back?
Yeah, we missed like 5 seconds of what you said.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
Yo, this is crazy. I just want to tell y'all that I love y'all before this thing goes off again or something like that. I'm sorry for the shaky internet. I just moved. Please excuse me.
Sorry.
But no, I mean, I just think that sometimes his tweets are given way too much face value, and I understand that the role that he plays, you know, in this country. But I think that now it's just gonna require a special level of focus for everyone to just kind of look past that and to stay focused on the goals that actually need to be accomplished as far as this fight, because that's all it is. It's a distraction. I think that we're all fully capable of blocking anyone's tweets that we don't want to see. And I just think that the trend that we're going in right now, we need to keep on riding with the momentum of change and just not let things that he decides to send out at 6 a.m. be a distraction. Although the media has an obligation to cover those types of things, I just think that as far as the fight and the change that people are seeking, can't let that be a distraction.
Well, you have to put it in perspective. Like we said with social media, on social media, we have some individuals who are just there to create chaos. And it's very, very unfortunate that one of those individuals who would, you know, fall into the category of being blocked on social media sites for the chaos that they incite is not able to be blocked. But we as adults in the room, we have to be more mature, and we have to continue to ignore people and not ignore in the sense of block, because like you said, we want that information out there, but we have to be able to tune that out and really be on a higher level and platform of what we're trying to move forward. And that's actual reform, and that's actual change. If we block out, you know, what could be considered as trolls or individuals who are there to incite chaos in what we, you know, in what we don't, we've decided as a country, we do not want chaos. We want progressive, we want, you know, we want together, and we want things to change together. We have to block out those things.
Dom, if I may, you know, something that comes to mind every time I see the tweets, the infamous tweets from 45, is there, he uses a coded language that our culture doesn't quite know, but we are very familiar with. Every time there is a term, it triggers certain populations. Like what you were saying, Dom, it's scary because we don't know what he's elevated to incite in folks, to trigger in folks that are already causing us harm. And so if we look at the language and the vernacular is used, it looks like the methods of a madman, but it's actually very strategic. That's the thing that we don't see, is when you are lumping in Second Amendment rights with COVID and saying, take back your states. And then the next thing you see are folks walking the streets armed, storming governments. That was a language. that community understood very clearly. And if you say those trigger words, we saw this in the creation of Confederacy versus the Union. You were a patriot, right? The Confederate flag was not the first iteration of the Confederate flag. We saw these certain terms even back then. Uncle Sam needs you. There's words. And so as I look at his tweets, I see themes, and I see themes that are historic. And every time he says that, he knows who he's speaking to. It ain't us, but it will impact us. And it's not allies who are trying to fight against the old antiquated systems, but it will impact their work and their ability to speak to folks who are saying, this isn't in my lifetime. I'm not at risk for this, but I'm at risk for losing my liberty. I'm at risk for losing my gun rights. I'm at risk for losing my constitutional right of free assembly, speech, religion. We couldn't even COVID-19 correctly. We couldn't even stay at home for folks really lumping it in with infringement on religion. And it's because we're seeing the language in the tweets is for folks to resonate with them so that it triggers a response. And then we're wondering why this population is acting this way. It's because it's a signal. It's because these terms are made for that community. And if we don't learn those words, if we don't learn those terms, it just looks like aggravating social media. It looks like a madman who is just needing to get his, Twitter, deactivated, when really it's a coded language.
I agree with that. I agree with that fully. And I think that's where privilege comes in. If you're of somebody who has the privilege to speak to people and say, I'm an American and I refuse to have chaos, I refuse to have a civil war, I refuse to have anything that is against us moving in a progressive manner, then that's where your privilege comes in. That's where your privilege comes in to say, I refuse this. I denounce this. I don't want this in my country because this is my America. And I don't want anything that is not moving my America to the space where it needs to be. So I implore people, it is their privilege to speak against things that are set to incite chaos in the country that they reside in.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to realize just how LA says that she doesn't have the mental capacity to sit here and teach individuals certain things. I don't have any type of mental capacity to prove to you my greatness. I don't think I need to list off a resume, talk about things that I've done in my life, places that I've been and traveled to, things that I've helped other people to realize, oh, she's a good Black girl. We shouldn't mess with her. No, I'm a Black woman and y'all shouldn't mess with me regardless. Like, there shouldn't be a resume of credentials where I shouldn't be targeted. And so, like, what conversations, like, within the white community are you guys having when that guy that sits in that house, when he's inciting these kind of messages to people? Like, what is that inciting in your community? Like, what happens after that?
It's funny. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Hannah.
No, you were on mute. That's all we were saying.
Oh, I think it's something as straightforward as when you hear it, you say something. Brian, you said we don't want to block all of this out because the information's got to get out there, but we shouldn't be relying on an aphorism from a comic book, with great power comes great responsibility, to be mature adults. Okay. And honestly, like, that should be something everybody can live by, from child to the oldest of us. With great power comes great responsibility. So just as you would say, do what you know is right, not what you see on TV. If you hear a dog whistle message, if you hear the virus referred to as the Wuhan virus, if you hear language about hoses and turning the water on people, these are phrases that signal deeply offensive oppression. So you say something, even if you think the individual that you're talking with already has a viewpoint that is similar to yours. Like, engage in that conversation. I talked to my father about this recently, like, exactly what you said. Like, these seem like the tweets of somebody that's come unhinged. And while that can be a truism, an additional thing is these are messages that send a signal. And LA, I'm really glad your grounding's in history. As a student of history, I really appreciate that. But you say that because the individual you pass on that message to can pass that on to their parents and their relatives and their peers, because you're not going to be there to have the conversation every time, but you can have a positive ripple effect. So while you can't block it out, you've got to start speaking out, speaking back.
And thinking specifically about this president, I think it's really important to remember that white liberalism can be just as problematic as like far right conservatism, right? Like, because white liberal people think they're good. We've done the work, we're good. I didn't vote for him. I love Barack Obama, go team, right? Like, they think that they're done. We as a group think that we're done. And it's so interesting when you think about this president. I don't know anybody who talks about his tweets, because we're all like, yeah, we're done. It doesn't matter. But that won't change anything, right? My point from a minute ago too, just to kind of bring it up with what you said, LA, is I haven't read that tweet, Dom, but as you read it, I was writing words down and I wrote by, thereby, and intimating, which we all know he didn't write that shit, just to be clear. But the fact that I can hear those words and think he didn't write it, combined with LA's point, means that getting rid of him isn't going to do a whole lot. It's the system, it's the people around, it's everyone who's involved in creating these kinds of tweets for whoever is in charge of our country, knowing how that system works and knowing what kind of language to work. It's not one person, it's the whole system.
And I think it speaks to, like you were saying, Josh, it speaks to some crazy things when somebody says, what do you have to lose? You have no jobs. 58% of your youth is unemployed. And this is stuff that somebody, if they're privileged, they can take it lightly, like, man, this is just a reality star and he's up there just grandstanding. But when you realize that he's actually speaking truthful numbers and that these are actual issues that he's able to say, and they're able to, what do you have to lose? You have to sit back and actually listen to the fact that he's actually saying, something real inside of that he's making very, very light of, but, we ignore it and we throw it off because it comes from him. But it's like, Dad, for him to be able to even say, what do you have to lose? That means that we need to look at society and say, there's no way in hell that he should be able to joke over this for anybody who lives in my society.
So I think that.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dom.
So I just wanted to go ahead. This, like I said, these conversations are gonna happen every week. Every day we go to sleep, we wake up to something different, and it's bad for my heart. I don't be having time for it. However, I do feel that the conversations need to continue to happen. Anybody watching this conversation, feeling that they can contribute to the conversation in a positive way, please feel free to hit myself up or someone with the Black Alliance. Just try to become part of the table as well. If you don't agree with anything that we're saying and you still have something to say, by all means, join us. I'll speak respectfully. You might not like everything that I have to say, but just final words in closing up, things that you took away from this conversation. If anybody has anything to say, what this conversation continues you to push you forward to do, and how you look to affect change like near future, because time is of the essence.
I think for me, and this ties back to like something that Josh said a while ago, like the statement of like hosing people down. Like this week specifically, one of the conversations I had was a conversation with someone that I actually go to church with that had reposted a video of it and was making light and people actually engaging in dialogue over it. And I called them out, and it led to dialogue, and it was a very difficult dialogue. It ended up that the person took it down, and just said to me like, I love you, and they took it down, and that they were sorry that it hurt me. The dialogue needs to continue, because it's not that it hurt me, right? I think that's the first step, but then more dialogue needs to continue around that. And so for me, next steps is continuing, like for my eyes to be open to things like that, for those specific dialogues to continue with people in the white community. And for me specifically, when I think of the lenses that I carry, one of those is a Christian. And I think that as a Christian, we have a specific task and focus when it comes to race relations. And so there are specific steps that I'm taking this week with that lens. And so there are steps that I'm taking this week. And so I think that this work and these conversations that we're having are really helpful for me. And so I'm extremely grateful for the opportunity to be at this table and to learn from you all. Like I'm just pushed. I mean, when you all speak, it just speaks into my soul and really fills me up and with ideas and just to learn from y'all. So I'm grateful for that.
You got, oh, go ahead, Josh. It's cool.
No, Joseph, while you've got audio, you go ahead.
No, I really appreciate everyone's perspective at this table. I definitely took a lot from it, especially from LA. Thank you so much, from your perspective. But you know what, I think I'm going to carry from here, as a Black journalist, I'm going to keep on pushing my truth. I think it's important to share my experiences in these meetings, in these editorial meetings, and, to not get visibly impatient with the process, because I understand that a lot of people who do want to be allies have a lot of learning and growing to do, as well as myself. So I'm a firm believer that it's a journey. I'm optimistic about the journey, but I definitely think that we need to stay aggressive with the fight.
Dominique, you asked earlier, what are our next steps? And I think it's staying vigilant. And Joseph, you're 100% right. Like not losing the energy, not giving up. And it's saying something to individuals that are saying the wrong things. Like Hannah, you mentioned that individual saying the wrong things, but also those that are saying the right things. So I want to lift up a voice that's way more eloquent than mine. In the young adult literature circles, Black female writers are a definite minority in that group. But Angie Thomas said something last week on a talk with Nick Stone, and it was, if not the truest thing I've ever heard, then very close to it. She said, white people are way more worried about being called a racist than being a racist. So when individuals put the right thing on Twitter or the right thing on Instagram or the right thing on Facebook, go ahead and ask them what their next steps are. Hey, I love that you posted this article. Would you like to talk about it? I saw you were going to the march. What are your next steps? What lane are you going to be in to support people? What are your plans for next week? Or I'm doing this. You want to join me? So like talking to the people that are saying the things that are definitely in the wrong side, but also like have the conversation with people that are saying all the right things, checking all the right boxes, putting it up on their business account, also holding each other and those people accountable.
And something really quick, donate to folks who are holding down this work. Donate to, like Dom holding down today with Correctional Views. Individuals who are holding down this work are also still needing to eat, breathe, sleep, pay their bills in between of leading a revolution and educating folks. So that's another big way that allies can support folks. Don't do a lump sum donation and be done. See if you can set up monthly. I saw this composite of how folks can really be involved yesterday, I think on Twitter. One thing stood out to me: set up reoccurring donations to organizations that are really doing the work on the ground so that it's sustainable. Share the articles that is being written by such folks as Joseph. Actually share the articles that are being written by Black folks about Black folks, so that they're supported in their work and you're supported in education, and you don't have to hit up your friend for their free labor. So I just want to add in those two things.
Yeah, Joseph, you were talking about it earlier. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think the biggest reality is always going to go back to what LA said. And, that's if we're shifting the budget and we're shifting the funds, then we need to put money into recreation. We need to put money into STEM labs. We need to put money into education. We have to allot our funds to these businesses that put those things in the forefront. Black businesses, you definitely want to partner with some, especially, on a larger scale. People want to partner with Black businesses for transportation, for all of the different things, the different avenues that, people different from, what we're used to, actually organize. So, I just say have diversity of thought. Thank you guys so much for, coming to the table and not being afraid to come to the table. Like I say, with my relationship, with my actual communication with my girlfriend, being willing to have this conversation and being willing to dialogue and being willing to just grow and understand and being able to allow people to articulate their feelings safely so that we can come to some understandings. We're not monolithic. We're not always going to think the same on every point, and that's okay. But listening and really articulating and getting through some thoughts is the beginning part of that. That's the beginning aspect of it. So, I definitely want to thank you, Dominique, for, allowing me to be on this panel. And thank you guys for, coming through and, committing yourselves to doing the work. Like I said, it's tireless, but it's worth it because, at the end of the day, like, man, our country can be so great. Like, we have so much to be thankful for every day. And, it's taken the pandemic to kind of give us a pause and really, we don't have sports to look at. We have our kids or, whatever it is in front of our face every day. And thank you for allowing this to be in front of your face and to actually do the work.
I will definitely say all of those same thank yous as Brian. You said them much better than me. I think next steps for me is really looking at balance, right? So like with white people, what's the balance between having conversations and that critique of liberalism and thinking that I am the police for other people? And then conversations with not white people, where is the balance of listening and uplifting versus co-opting? So like for me, the next steps are really ensuring balance in what I am doing, thinking before I speak, thinking before I click, but thinking and speaking and clicking. So thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Next steps for this conversation will be happening again in next week. Highlighting once again what Ellie said, organizations that do continue to push a lot of this information do need help. My organization needs lots of help. If anyone watching or anyone involved in this talk would like to donate to Correctional Views, you can go to the website, www.correctionalviews.com. There's like this little cute donate button right there. You just push it. You just push the button. That's it. And so, yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining. I really appreciate everybody today, and I look forward to talking to everybody in the future. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Dom.
Thanks, LA. I appreciate you. Joseph, Esco, I don't like calling you Joseph. Esco, I appreciate you.
I appreciate you too.